Are great men gentle? Is your father or whoever you looked up to as gentle? Did he have the wisdom that he imparted on you that made you become the man or whoever better in society? Well, this video, ladies and gentlemen, that we are about to dive into says some very existential things that I thought it was right that I shared with you guys. And that said, let us check it out.
There's a scene in Return of the King, the book to be specific, where the king returns. Aragorn arrives at Minas Tirith not a moment too soon, turning the tide of the battle, vanquishing Gondor's foes, and, apparently, preparing to claim his rightful place on the throne. As his ships come into view of the city, he unfurls his standard. There flowered a white tree, and that was for Gondor, but 7 stars were above it, and a high crown above it, the signs of Elendil that no lord had borne for years beyond count. The message could hardly be clearer, and yet, when the day is won, Aragorn does not process in glory through the gates and streets of Minas Tirith, does not call upon the steward and present himself as Elendil's heir. Instead, he says, "I fear that if I enter it unbidden, then doubt and debate may arise, which should not be while this war is fought. I will not enter in, nor make any claim, until it be seen whether we or Mordor shall prevail." This is one of the most uniquely awesome moments in the whole book. Here is a man who has just saved his city, his people from utter ruin and destruction, a man who has been waiting and preparing for this moment for 87 years, a man of unparalleled strength and skill, but he waits because he knows that ambition must be tempered by prudence, that he must only claim even that which is lawfully his, with a spirit of wisdom and humility. Aragorn does, however, not remain camped outside the walls. He is the king, whether or not he sits upon the throne, and a king's first duty is to his people, especially to those who fell in battle defending his kingdom. So, Aragorn enters Minas Tirith in secret, going only to the houses of healing to tend to those whose wounds cannot be mended by any other. It is through his healing of Éowyn and Merry, his conquering of the mysterious malady afflicted upon them as they slew the Witch King, that Aragorn becomes known to his people. The hands of the king are the hands of the healer, and so shall the rightful king be known. And soon the word had gone out from the house that the king was indeed come among them, and after war he brought healing, and the news ran through the city.
I never knew Lord of the Rings was this deep, fam. I watched it as a kid. I never understood it. Those are some principles of a good leader, I guess, fam. And this, I guess, can teach you low key. That's basically me and my mind about politics of being a good leader, I guess, to some degree. You know what I mean? Maybe I know it's a fantasy thing, but you can learn a thing or two from such, fam, and fair flipping play, fam.
If you know anything about Tolkien's personal history, this will make complete sense to you. Only 2 months after marrying his beloved Edith, J.R.R. Tolkien, already serving in the British Army as an officer, was sent across the English Channel for the carnage of the Somme. What the professor witnessed in France, we can only imagine if we dare. The utter stupid waste of war, not only material but moral and spiritual, is so staggering to those who have to endure it. Although his books do in fact contain a war and great warriors performing mighty deeds on the battlefield, that is not what The Lord of the Rings is about. Its center is not in strife and war and heroism, though they are understood and depicted, but in freedom, peace, ordinary life, and good liking. This is why Tolkien spends all that time describing the various landscapes of Middle-earth, why our heroes stop to enjoy a hearty meal with Farmer Maggot and rest a long while in Rivendell, and why Sauron's defeat is only the beginning of the story's end. It's why the scouring of the Shire, though objectively less bad than the reign of Sauron, somehow feels more wicked, because Saruman and his cronies deliberately and maliciously destroyed the normal, ordinary, and good life that the Shire folk had lived for centuries. It would fly in the face of that central theme for Aragorn to claim his throne as a conquering hero. Although the crown is rightfully his, he acknowledges that a king has no power unless it is granted to him by his people, and what better way to show them that he is worthy of their trust, admiration, and love than by healing their wounds.
That's deep. I'm just thinking a king does not have power unless it's given to him by his people, even in the modern world. I think that will make sense, like who actually deserves to be, glorified, or rather like be in those seats where they can actually serve the people better, you know what I mean, and actually give and hear the the cries of the people, all that kind of stuff.
Aragorn did not take the throne. It was given to him, first by right of his birth, and again by the people of Gondor, who recognized the king in their midst, but only after he gave of himself, his gentle, healing hands proving far kinglier than his skill with the sword. Great men do not take, they give. Still, a man cannot ignore duty, even power, when thrust upon him, whether by circumstance, by birth, as was Aragorn's case, or by his very nature. The first half of Kratos' story is all about taking.
Thor? No, Thor is crazy. I mean, God of War. Yeah. I hope whoever is gonna make a live action, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna come soon. Please do cook and please do not do your BS fam. Actually take your time and involve the creators as much. Honestly, fam. Thor is deep. Thor. God of War is deep.
Taking revenge on Ares for the deaths of his wife and daughter, taking Olympus from Zeus and the rest of the gods in repayment for his betrayal at his father's hands, taking the lives of any god, titan, or mortal who dares stand in his way. And what is his reward at the end of this campaign? More death. Countless deaths, uncontrollable destruction, a land consumed by floods, storms, and souls loosed from Hades. All the power he had seized in his pursuit of vengeance was ultimately rendered useless, helpless, pitiful, impotent. When we meet him again, all those years later, it seems that this new Kratos is a gentler sort, but only kind of.
What are you doing? Now his guard is up. Only fire. Only fire when I tell you to fire.
The rage that propelled him to the summit of Mount Olympus is merely restrained, put in check by years of focused training and constant effort, yet ever threatening to burst forth. That is not true gentleness. To be gentle does not merely mean to be free of anger, roughness, or violence. The gentleman must not be dominated by his emotions that urge him to action, but neither can he succumb to their opposites.
From what I'm understanding, you're a man you've had a past. You've had a past with highs and lows, and maybe the lows being a lot, and maybe rage filled, and then you birth into another. Or rather, you sire someone else into this kingdom, into this realm, and you try to tender love. But again, you're like, show them character, show them, but you do not know how to do that because maybe you've been enthralled, you've been, engulfed into this rage that has not really left your soul, so to say. And so trying to balance between the two, your past and the future, or rather your past and the present, becomes a little bit hard. Why am I sounding philosophical this moment, fam? That's crazy.
The fear and timidity that would have him refuse to act in a kind and gentle manner. In the early hours of the 2018 game, we find Kratos swinging from one end of this pendulum to the other, unable to land in the virtuous middle. In one scene, he snaps angrily at his son, but in a later one cannot bring himself to place a consoling, comforting hand on Atreus' shoulder, his fear of forming a bond holding him back. This is, unfortunately, quite a natural reaction when we are aware of our instinctive vices. We force ourselves to act in the polar opposite fashion, and thus fall prey to the opposite vice.
That's basically some sort of arrogance that comes with whatever, man. Be it with our past, be it with what we've learned and we're trying to unlearn, or, when situations at hand brings us to a place of humble, and then there's that war, the war within your soul, so yeah, deep.
Gentleness cannot be inactive and passive. Kratos hiding Atreus' true nature until his son nearly died was no kindness. His refusal to call his own child anything but
boy,
and thus to keep distance between them, would not spare Atreus from becoming like his father. Are restraint and temperance necessary for a man, especially one of Kratos' particular attributes? Absolutely. But there must be something that replaces the anger once it has been tamped down, or it will eventually spring back up to fill the void. That is, ideally, true gentleness. And what better way to grow in such a virtue than by taking care of a young child? Having for myself, I can personally attest that you need to be patient, gentle, kind, reassuring, patient, composed, compassionate, and did I say patient yet? The virtue of gentleness, like all virtues, is directed outward, oriented toward the good of another. Anger seeks to destroy what I hate. Fear and inaction seek to preserve what I cannot stand to lose. Gentleness lives in between these vices. It does not ruthlessly stamp out undesirable behaviors or tendencies, nor does it let them go unnoticed and uncorrected. It guides, directs, and teaches with a spirit of humility and, yes, patience, which Kratos needs in great supply, especially after Atreus learns he's a god and lets his ego run away from him.
It's all you ever talk about, over and over. Do something about it or shut up already.
To be fair to Kratos, he does reprimand Atreus for his rudeness, but only later, once the moment has passed and the kid has seemingly cemented in his mind his justification at having spoken in such a manner. Why wait? Because Kratos was unsure of himself. In days past, he might have given Atreus a swift clout on the ear and told him to respect his elders. And in days to come, he might have issued that admonishment on the spot. But this is a man still figuring out how to be gentle, how to raise a son who will be better than he was. That doubt, to some extent, lingers.
If that is your parent is a bit in tune with their feelings, or at least trying to reshape something and reshape you into someone better, isn't that like basically all our parents, especially, some of our parents, come from broken backgrounds, or some backgrounds where they did not receive the love that they would have wanted, And so sometimes relating to us, who is in the modern world, who they see as weak, and their own sense of strength as like showing us some level of bitterness, and that is now also seen by Kratos and his son, So, man, I do relate, man, and I do feel for, I guess, the young one, and I do guess also the POV of Kratos, where he's coming from, you know what I mean?
Through this game and into the next, Kratos certainly gets more confident as a father, but there remains a calling which he still refuses to hear or heed, because, like it or not, and he does not, Kratos is a god. He cannot hide forever. He cannot let his strength and power be forever wasted chopping trees and paddling canoes. And it is only because of that strength that he is able to be gentle, to become a generous and benevolent god beloved by the mortals of his realm. Restraint, as I said, is certainly not everything, but there must be something to restrain, to control. To be gentle, a man must be strong. There is inherent beauty in possessing great strength. The human body is a wonderful thing, and all men ought to train and test their physical strength and endurance. Just so it's clear, I do my best to put my money where my mouth is. I trained for and ran a marathon last year. I was by no means fast, and I wasn't particularly happy with my performance on race day, but I did it. And I'm glad I did it. It means a great deal that I trained hard for 12 straight weeks, that I did something I had never done before, something that required significant physical and mental endurance. I doubt I'll ever master the art of long-distance running. I'll be thrilled if I ever finish a marathon in under 4 hours, and I'll certainly never run it without shoes, which I figure would be the equivalent of Thor's from Vinland Saga fighting armed men with his bare fists, which he does do until he runs into a more skilled opponent, namely Askeladd, and is forced to draw his sword.
The reason I rely on a weapon like this is because I'm weak. One who's a great warrior doesn't need a sword.
It would be hard to pick a better example of gentleness requiring strength, and this particular
Vinland Saga, just know that you've touched the hearts of many, and you've touched my heart. The creatives behind this, just know that you guys are brilliant, and you guys have changed my mind. I watched this when I was a bit younger, but I'm gonna watch this again, and I know I'm gonna go out of this with lots of wisdom, when it comes to revenge, when it comes to, being a man, all this kind of stuff. Anime, man, if you all sleep on anime, I don't know, fam, because this is the type of stuff that really, there's loads of them. I'm not talking about, there's loads of them that actually cook, fam, and this is one of them.
mountain of a man. Okay, it wouldn't be that hard for me, but you know what I mean. Gentleness requires control and self-mastery. The stronger or more prone to anger a man is, the stricter his control and the more finely tuned his self-mastery must be. When Thors and his band of poorly equipped and even less well-trained farmers are accosted by a crew of seasoned pirates, the man who once made his living with his sword plunges again into combat, but quite literally pulls his punches. Despite none of his opponents being remotely close to matching his strength or speed, Thors does not kill even one of them. A lesser warrior, one more dependent on his sword, would have been forced to kill or at least maim his opponents. Strength grants the virtuous man the ability to be gentle at all, to see to the good of his friends and family without resorting to rash or cowardly means. And yes, admittedly, that strength is in fact a threat, a danger, a promise that those who oppose a man's righteous ends will not think him quite so gentle.
I heard this, that a man who can control himself is far more dangerous than a man who can just let in all the demons, of the world, all that kind of stuff. So I guess, from what I'm learning, from I guess the unlearning process of whatever propaganda or whatever, the world has spoon-fed me, is being disciplined, practicing stoicism to some extent, knowing my role, knowing myself, being in tune with myself, being in tune with my feelings, with my weaknesses, and acknowledging that even though I am weak, but I find strength in that weakness by not acting upon that which will make me stumble.
Even Vinland Saga, which espouses a philosophy quite close to total pacifism,
You don't have enemies.
cannot deny that truth. Being kind, meek, and gentle is no excuse for being spineless or faint of heart. A man must be willing to use his strength, and must know when not to use it. As crucial as physical strength is, it is nothing if not accompanied by strength of character.
I'll crush her. It'll be easy, like breaking a toothpick.
I knew you couldn't do it. You're weak!
Mr. Incredible's character arc is a perfect example of this video's main theme, as it revolves around returning to form as he regains both his physical fitness and his all-important purpose, his reason to use that strength. As we see in the interlude between superheroes being outlawed and Mr. Incredible's first venture to Nomanasan Island, strength without purpose is pointless. Worse, it's harmful. Were Bob Parr a normal guy with normal grip strength, he would have far fewer expenses and might have been able to maintain a consistent career trajectory. If you are physically unable to throw your boss through a wall, and another wall, and another wall, and another wall, you might be motivated to cope in a less violent fashion. The parallel between the scene with Mr. Huff and the one with Mirage is fantastic. In the earlier scene, Bob's strength needs an outlet, and being denied one, seizes another. He is helpless to restrain himself. Then, when captured by Syndrome, Mr. Incredible seems helpless, but manages to make a play for power, one that would once again allow him to vent his frustration and anger through use of strength. But now, he lets go. He chooses to be gentle, his moral strength becoming his predominant attribute. There are differences, of course. The prior incident was fueled by hot-blooded rage. This would be cold-blooded murder, even if the person whom he would kill does, he thinks, bear a large share of the blame for the deaths of his wife and children. Still, Bob has grown between then and now. He was confronted with his failures, with his unfortunate legacy, with the realization that it was his own lack of gentleness that spurred Buddy down the path toward villainy.
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
Would the kid have become Syndrome anyway? Maybe, but that's a topic for a different video. What is certain,
With all the occurrences that are around us, you can actually shape, a villain or a hero by your words. So your words, or rather your action, does have consequences in both regards, So I think the question boils down to, what does your character or your character or your strength or whatever, what is it gonna build? What kind of legacy is it gonna build? Is it gonna build a bunch of nobodies, or someone who's gripping with the reality and saying, you know what, this is for the greater good? You know what I mean?
is that Mr. Incredible failed his young fan, even if only because he is just a man, and thus is every bit as prone to impatience and irritability as the rest of us. The thing is, though, he can't be. Great men, those whose deeds are witnessed by the masses and on whose words countless young men will hang, have a still greater duty to speak and act virtuously in every moment. The more a man is given, the more will be demanded of him. And yet, no matter how strong, how powerful, or how indestructible a man may be, he will never be enough. His strength cannot protect him from tragedy and loss.
I can't lose you again!
I'm not strong enough.
Is it Mr. Incredible's strength that wins the day? Well, kind of, yeah. No one else could hoist the Omnidroid's claw or throw a car through a jet, after all. But more importantly, it is his love for his family and his acceptance of their love for him that allow for this victory. Such a love is, by definition, gentle, free from harshness and severity, but also actively kind, patient, and tender. We see this potential in Bob right from the very beginning of the film in his interview, where he professes a desire to retire, settle down, and raise a family. As his story progresses, he learns that the two worlds in which he lives need not be separate. The strength he shows publicly and the gentleness his wife and children know are not incompatible. Instead, each is the reason the other can exist. A man's strength is best displayed by his capacity to be gentle. You may be aware of the term clair obscur, more commonly called chiaroscuro, the contrast of light and shadow in visual art that serves to deepen the shadows and make the light appear even brighter. I'm not talking about Expedition 33 right now, unfortunately, but rather one of the few games that can outclass it in terms of writing and voice acting, Red Dead Redemption 2. If you are somehow unaware, in this game you play as Arthur Morgan, an outlaw with a body count more or less equal to the Battle of Helm's Deep, even if you play as High Honor. That is, you do not go around wantonly robbing, shooting, and feeding people to alligators. But even the honorable version of Arthur is far from a righteous man, and thus is necessarily not a weak one. Mr. Morgan is one of the Vanderlyn gang's enforcers. He is the one man.
Brother, like, how can I get this game? Man, I don't have the peas to actually buy this, but I've heard good stuff about this game. I would really want to play this game. I guess I just have to work hard and then get those peas and actually buy them, man. What I'm also learning is like the yin and yang, you know, like a balance of both, you know, and actually hearing yourself, knowing that your strength can be your weakness, and your weakness can also be a strength, I guess, from what I'm learning. And how does those two worlds actually meet, you know?
They never leave behind when robbing a bank. He is the one tasked with beating overdue debts out of suckers who fell victim to the gang's loan shark. He is the one asked to bust people out of jail, seize territory from rival gangs, and perform every imaginable dastardly deed in the name of loyalty. I mean, of course he is. Arthur is the player character still. Red Dead 2 ensures that the player does not feel like a mere gopher, but emphasizes the trust and respect every member of the gang has for Arthur's abilities. He is, the game declares, the toughest, meanest, and most fearsome gun this side of the Mississippi. And yet, that is not Arthur's full identity. He does not define himself by his various criminal and violent endeavors, as do some other members of the gang, namely Micah.
Ain't much I care about more than those guns.
One of the more unique elements of Red Dead 2, a part that you could skip entirely should you so choose, is Arthur's journal. The words and sketches inside paint a markedly different picture than the facade presented to the gang's enemies or those who owe them money, at least until the end draws near. Arthur's handwriting is not only neat, it's downright beautiful. The words are written with a noticeably heavier hand when Arthur describes more dramatic or emotional experiences. He crosses words off when he misspells them, then corrects his mistake. There's even a page where Arthur uses the word swamp twice too close together, so he strikes through the second use and substitutes mud instead. As someone who writes a lot, I've never felt so seen. And of course, there is the artwork. Arthur sketches the towns he visits, the plants he discovers, and the people he meets, and those whom he has lost. One drawing in particular stands out. An abandoned church, apparently damaged beyond repair in a Civil War battle some 30-odd years ago.
So a broken man still has some elements of where he can actually still find himself. And where he actually finds himself, so to say, is by, in this sense, journaling, you know, drawing and just having this visual depiction of his past and what this other side could have been, so to say.
Arthur doesn't quite know why it captured his attention, but he feels compelled to immortalize its memory in his journal. All of this combines to round out Arthur's character beautifully. What would this man be if he had not been born into abject poverty, if he had not been raised from a young age by a silver-tongued thief lord, if his education had not been through the lens of us against the world? At least he has an us, though. Young men today are often encouraged to get yours, to lay claim to whatever wealth, power, and status they can, because the world hates them, society despises them, and no one is coming to help them. They're not being taught us against the world, but me against the world. I don't say that to belittle the problems young men face in our modern culture. I'm not exactly old myself, but to assert that me getting mine will never produce good fruit. Such an attitude is obviously selfish and ultimately empty. Acting in such a manner does nothing to heal our broken world.
Me versus the world, fam. I mean, I do have that attitude right now where I'm like, it's me against the world, even though I know I have family, other kind of stuff who are actually there to actually help me, achieve my goals, help me become, the man that I want. But sometimes it's hard. You're like, you know what, I have to do this because I have to have that little dog in me, that little, evil in me, man. So I do get the POV.
And is it not our job, our calling, and our duty to leave future generations a better world than the one into which we were born? The modern Western world doesn't expect much of men. Gone are the days when we were asked to be chivalrous. Being his family's breadwinner is, for many men, only a pipe dream. The purposes we live for, marriage, children, meaningful careers, are in significant decline. In the face of a world that is apathetic at best and overtly hostile at worst, what is a man to do?
Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
Arthur Morgan's story is that of a man in a dying world. Despite the 100+ year gap between then and now, his struggle is entirely too relatable for so many of us. He is forced to watch helplessly as the life he loved fades slowly away. But he does not grasp at straws that will inevitably slip through his fingers, as Dutch does. He does not let this cruel world turn him into a brute, as Micah does. He does not let the current of time pull him along aimlessly, as do Javier and Bill. Arthur chooses to take that gamble, to risk himself, to risk everything in the name of loyalty, true loyalty, and of love. So, if things seem bleak, remember this: a man can always do what he ought to do. The world may encourage weakness, we can be strong. Society may promote indulgence, we must be temperate. Our culture may promote egotism. It is our duty to serve, to spend our time, our sweat, our blood, and our very lives seeking the good of others. And this can only be done if we have a proper understanding of gentleness, if we are gentle men. And to be gentle, we must be able to endure countless hardships with patience and determination. We must embody humility and courage, not taking what we want, but
that is what we call character development in life. Like, I wish he could have also talked about Prince Zuko, because Prince Zuko is a perfect embodiment of how a man who's so much filled with rage also has a lot of love and has a lot of himself in it, but he sees the world as again, as he said, like it's him against the world, because he has a lot to prove, and that is many men, that is me to some degree.
Ever seeking to give. We must embrace the duty thrust upon us, knowing that any power granted by our station and nature is intended for that service. We must be strong and grow stronger, but always seeking the wisdom to use that strength in the service of kindness and selflessness. That sounds nigh on impossible, doesn't it? Yeah, pretty much. That's why we have fiction. We create the heroes we want to become, and then we strive to live up to the example they set. Men want to be inspired by the characters they see on screen or read on page. That's why Uncle Iroh is the most beloved character in Avatar: The Last Airbender. What's my source? Vibes, man. Just vibes. In my 2 prior videos on Iroh, I neglected one crucial aspect of his character: his confidence. Take the scene where he gets mugged, critiques and corrects his attacker's stance, and ends up having tea with the guy and encouraging him to pursue his true passion. That is, undoubtedly, an example of gentleness. Iroh doesn't immediately flatten the mugger, even though he easily could, no firebending required, but looks past the knife to the man holding it, to his desperation and hopelessness. And because he reacted gently, his would-be assailant becomes a friend, if only for an afternoon. But none of that would have been possible if Iroh were not confident in his own abilities, if the mugger's poor stance really did mean he was no threat. In this short scene, Iroh displays the heights of humility through his restraint and of confidence through his effortlessly calm nature. The two are not, as one might think, remotely opposed to one another. The truly humble man will be confident because he knows the truth about himself. Really, this whole video could have been about Iroh. He declines to become Fire Lord because he knows history would see it as a brother killing a brother to gain power. He does not reject the power granted to him, even though he himself has misused it in the past, but chooses to use it now for the good of all. As we just saw, he knows when to unleash his strength and when to employ a gentler approach. The contrast between his fearsome firebending and his love for tea and the simple pleasures of life brings out the best of both sides of his character. And of course, Iroh does all that he does in the name of loyalty, of service to those who need him, and of love for those entrusted to his care. I didn't really mean for this to turn into yet another Be Like Iroh video, but yeah, be like Iroh. Be strong, be patient, be fearsome, be loyal, be courageous, be loving, be wise, be gentle. All great men are.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was deep, fam, and hopefully you've learned a lot, man, and as I've learned a lot. So let us continue doing our thing and continue being the best version that we could be. Let us continue reading if we can, and let us grow wiser with wisdom and continue being in tune with our missions. And go check him out, go watch the full video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.